Good morning. It's Sunday morning. It's close to 10 a.m. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this video is because I don't want to go out and shovel snow. And if anybody would like extra credit, my driveway is waiting for you. Thankfully, I have a snow blower, and you need a whole hour just to hear my snow blower stories. But the fact that I have Epcot behind me tells you that I would rather be in Florida than here. Enough said. So, short story is that sometimes I feel the need just to drop what I call an introductory video prior to a class. There's no urgency in this particular video because I'm sure that many of the issues I'm going to address in a moment, I will also address Tuesday night. Nonetheless, let's move forward, and I'm going to just review the agenda so that you have a handle on that. And if you have some time today, if you're not watching football games or so forth, over the next tonight, or if you have nothing to do tomorrow, he smiled sarcastically, then you can take a half hour or so to watch this. And it will help you even after the class is finished sometimes, just to catch up on some things I may not necessarily mention in the class itself. So we will share the screen and begin. I haven't loaded this to Canvas yet. I will as soon as I finish this video. This is the lesson agenda for Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. As I said one or two other times, I always do a lesson agenda, call it a lesson plan if you want, as a guideline for myself, as a guideline for you, in case you're looking for some things. What I also do often, as I have done in this particular lesson agenda, is put some links into some things that you need to see, so that which I may not necessarily drop into the Canvas module. I will be dropping this into the Canvas module, so you can avail yourself of it from that, and then you can click on some of the links below in order for you to be somewhat prepared for the issues we're going to try to tackle this coming week. I see this particular week coming up, notwithstanding the fact I thought we had a really good meeting. I really enjoyed interacting with you all last Tuesday online. I just felt that I'll probably be reviewing some things as I move along. For those of you who know anything about instructional lesson design, a good instructional design always drops back a little bit before it goes forward. And that's sort of one of my principles with LES, is that I've practiced for longer than any of you have been alive, and with pretty good effect. At any rate, here's the lesson agenda. I'm going to read at you, and then just sort of prep you and sort of coming attractions for what's going to be happening Tuesday. And a lot, because it's I think a pretty jam-filled expectation of you, some of which will be a continuation of what we did last week. So the goals are, and I will probably change this as I'm talking to you, but right now the goals are to meet and greet, which we think is not necessary, but someone of you, I forget the lady who was supposed to be everybody's conscience, I think it was Karen. Karen, you remind me to take attendance, because St. John's wants me to take attendance and affirm that all of you exist. So I have to do that, and I will forget to do that. In fact, I should put that up here so I don't forget it either. But I'm leaving it on Karen to be my Jiminy Cricket. So I'm going to put Karen in the lesson agenda so that she knows. And I'm going to highlight you, Karen, so we know there's a lot of pressure on you to keep me from forgetting what day it is. I always do some housekeeping premises, and that's certainly part of the introductory pieces. What we wanted to do the other day, if you recall, was to break you into breakout rooms when we were online, and have you kind of self-assess yourself. And you have begun to do that. I'm not sure if everyone has done it yet, but many of you posted some material about that, that I'll comment about now, which is to say that you're all being very, very humble and modest, and saying that you're ones and twos, and you're probably more than that. But it's only okay to be zeros at this point, because you're so new into the program that it's almost, as I said to a couple of people, dangerous, and I emphasize that word, to paint yourself into corners. It's going to happen, even though I'm telling you Don't let it happen. You're going to get a professor. You may already have had a professor in the first semester who asked you what your topic was and may have even plugged you into some kind of quantitative or qualitative mini study to develop. And I fully respect the fact that the professors are trying to get your muscles started. At the same time, it worries me because what happens is, and by the way, it doesn't necessarily play out as you get through the end of this program, when you get to the other side of the tunnel, is that you think that the mini study you developed perhaps last semester or in an upcoming semester early on in the program is really what you have to do, because after all, you've done all this work and you have all this data. And to that, I say poppycock, because and what you do is you paint yourself into a corner and you close your mind to any number of courses you're going to have that may give you whole new ideas to consider, or a different spin on something that you have been considering. And it's really kind of dangerous. So keep your mind open on that. And I can't emphasize that enough. So when you're self-assessing, it's fine to realize that what it is that you don't know. More importantly, it's more important to pay attention to what it is that you don't know, which is true for everybody, including myself. So that was what I had that discussion question in there. And I do appreciate the candor that you folks invest in. I appreciate the fact that many of you commented on other persons' comments. And I want to reiterate that that is an expectation of the course, that you will be commenting about other folks' posts on the various discussion questions that will emerge. Okay, so we've done some housekeeping. We'll continue to do some self-assessing of the research continuum. I'm going to put you in small groups, although I'm not sure it's a wise thing to do with the COVID crisis. I'm not sure how to handle that physically, but we'll think of a solution to that down the line. Bring your masks, he shouted. Bring your masks, bring 2 masks. Bring saran wrap, do what you have to do. I'm going to be quite germophobic with you, quite frankly. Not that I think that you're all going to infect me, but the more I'm involved with this, the more I keep waiting for something to happen. No offense. All right, so we're going to troubleshoot at the syllabus. Someone always has a question about that, and I'll be happy to address those as I see them. I think we've begun to organize for assignments and calendars. I'm not good at that, as some of you may have noticed, but we'll solidify that across time. Pick a theory. Any theory means we're really going to consider a theory, any theory. For any of you to get your teeth into a theory at this point could be dangerous, although it might be okay. If I recall, I had a student in my Wednesday class who she's at the end of the program. She's now involved in her actual dissertation development to propose. And I said, tell me about your chapter 2. And she said, I haven't got much of a chapter 2, but I know what my theory is. So I kind of got my wise guy look. Oh yeah, really you do? And she said, I wrote it down over here. The one I had kind of heard of, know nothing about other than what I think I know about, which is not the same thing. She said, my theoretical framework is critical race feminism. And I said, wow, I never heard of that, but I love it. I love the title. And she was quite articulate about how, I think she was studying, I don't exactly remember, but it was basically how females are affected by expectations, if I remember it right. And she went on to explain that it was an extension of critical race theory, which nowadays got a little tarnish on it. And I'm not going to get into that on video, although I'm happy to get into it. Anybody who wants to explore it, because it's a valid theory to take a look at, if that's what you think where you want to go with it, because it's a theory, right? At any rate, so we're going to consider a theory, any theory. We're going to do a good chunk of that today, and then I'm going to introduce a premise that you may not be familiar with, and that is theoretical frame versus conceptual frame. I'll come back to that in a minute. It's an important distinction, but sometimes gets blurred. And I just want to begin to explain that to you. I don't expect us to have you master the issues associated with that today, but I want you to get that embedded into your thinking souls, the analytical part of you, for you to consider the differences between the two. I always kind of try to identify materials. Sometimes I don't have everything on the list, but right now my materials are this agenda, and this is going into module 2 when you look for it, as well as some documents if I can find a place to put that. So they'll be in. This agenda and other things I think belong in there will be there in there as well. You have the syllabus already. It's in Canvas. You have the theory chart, which is actually also on this agenda. There's really no sense taking it off the agenda until we no longer need it, which may mean that it will never come off in this course. So you have the theory chart. I've also given you something that Dr. Faley provided me. I think it's pretty good. Is what she calls a study matrix, and we'll hopefully get a chance to look at that probably in the small groups. We also put 2 little teeny tiny videos. I think they're about 3 or 4 minutes long each. The first one's about theoretical frame, and the second one is about conceptual frame. And I'm not saying, by the way, that these 2 YouTubes are gospel, but I am saying they give you a chance to think about the difference between what a theory is and what your conceptual framework might be. And you're going to get a Saturday YouTube, which is this. So, which is a Sunday, because I got tired yesterday watching the snow blow. And so this will be in your, in that module. I'll have a YouTube. I will convert this Zoom to a YouTube, and then it'll be on a YouTube link, and you can watch it at your leisure. Should you watch it before the class begins? Probably. Will you know that it's there before Tuesday? Maybe not. Does that mean you should never watch the video? Well, you're here now. The answer is, yeah, you should still watch it. Okay. All right, so here's my sequence. We're going to do the meet and greet. Karen's going to help me take attendance. And then we're just going to go through some calendar updates. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but I will do that. This is an important announcement. I was very, I took your request to have librarian presentation seriously. And the next day I called the library, and that was an interesting conversation. We whispered to you and say, nobody wants to physically come out to Long Island. I don't know why, but they don't. I do know why. And they said, well, we can't come out there. Meanwhile, they go to Staten Island, from what I can tell, because they have an actual librarian in Staten Island. Long Island Center, for some reason, doesn't have a librarian. But we overcame that after a little bit of arm wrestling. And so we're going to be doing a WebEx on the 8th. A professor from the library, Professor Turner, he and I are still talking about what I think that you need. And if you think that you want to help me understand that much better, please let me know, and I'll let him know. He seems to be very willing to help us with that. If you don't already bring your laptop or some kind of device to class, I would advise that you do. I intend to show it on the classroom monitor, but who knows if that's going to work. Sometimes they don't. All the more reason to have insurance for that. So that'll be the brunt of the class on the 8th. I also know the 2 of you can't make the 8th. I don't know if it can be recorded. I think it can be. I will certainly look into that. And if it isn't recorded, you're going to have to, you and I are going to have to figure out another way to compensate that you can't be here. I decided I want to schedule individual conferences with you. It's not a course requirement. I just feel it's a kind of a moral obligation to talk to you individually without just saying hello and goodbye. So I don't know how I want to approach this yet. Maybe some of you have some ideas about that. I'm not talking about a 3-hour conversation. I'm talking about 15 to 30-minute conversation over the next couple of weeks, where you can, and I would rather do it by Zoom or by phone call than in the classroom, because when I'm in the classroom and I'm trying to conference a person, I always remember there's 10 other people who may need me too, and I get distracted. So I'd rather do it with Epcot behind me, and I'd like to do it early on. I just hope that my understanding where you are and my squeezing your thinking a little bit more will send you in a good direction, because as the twig is bent, so grows the tree, he said. just wanted to mention that had I known about this text prior to the course, I would have probably required this text rather than the text that we have. Now, the text that we're using is a fine text. There's nothing wrong with the text. And it's fairly up to date too. So it's not a bad text. And I'm enjoying parts of it. But I do think that this one that was developed by Dr. Jan Hammond and Dr. Paul Lester, both of whom are very well-known people in the leadership field and in the doctoral field, have developed, and I think it's got some real value. So I don't even know what it costs. I don't think it's a crazy amount of money. You may want to download it to a Kindle or to a device for a sample. And if it looks like it's got value to you, I would advise that you at least download it as an electronic book, if not a hardcover. The older I get, the more I like the electronic books because I can highlight and notate and have those highlights and notations organized better than if I just did it by taking taking a highlighter and highlighting half of a book, because that's the way I do things. So we're talking again about self-assessing in small groups. We're going to continue to work with the issue of PMI, okay? Plus minus interesting, plus minus investigatory, whichever word you want to use. That's the language we want to use. And really what we're talking about here is personal mastery. I don't know, I'm talking fast, I know. I don't know if personal mastery, that is to say the learning disciplines of Peter Senge, that you learned about those things. I kind of think that you did, if not in the doctoral classes, more likely in your PD classes. I'm a great believer in learning disciplines, one of them being personal mastery. So I'll be talking about that in class and probably also advocating that learning organizational disciplines, 5 of them per Peter Senge, as well as a couple of offshoots we can talk to, are very viable, extremely viable theoretical frameworks. Almost, here's a theoretical framework, here you go. That's how good they are for you. So I'm going to speak to that briefly in class, and I'll probably shoot you some videos to go with that as well. We already talked about troubleshooting the syllabus, and this is really from the first week. And then very, very briefly, we're going to talk about the TF versus the CF, that is to say the theoretical frame versus the conceptual frame. Sometimes they get blurry. Sometimes they get confused. I've noticed that in several YouTube videos. They are different. One is more nearly a subsidiary of the other. And I would say that even though the Venn diagram I popped up here makes it look as though theoretical and conceptual are equal in weight, they're not. I would say that the theoretical frame has more value for you right now in chapter 2, but we're not going to ignore conceptual frame. Now, briefly, a conceptual frame, there is no PowerPoint on that yet. I will have a PowerPoint ready for that to go on Tuesday. There is no PowerPoint. I'm repeating myself. That's dangerous. The conceptual frame is how you mean to present your information, how you mean to show how your variables fit. It could be a formula. It could be a Venn diagram. It could be a Rubik's Cube. It could be any number of things. And I'll be talking about this across time. I'm just introducing the concepts, no pun intended, about the two, about TF and CF, so that you begin to see the differences. And the rhetorical question in terms of CF is, what are your variables that you're considering, whether they're qualitative or quantitative, doesn't matter, and how are they related to each other? I'll give you one right now. You ready? I forgot it. C equals MC squared. Just reading about this morning. That's why it's sticking in my bald head. E equals MC squared. Einstein's theory of relativity was explained in the formula C, that is to say the speed of light, equals mass times the square root of C equals energy. I'm sorry. C equals MC squared. Right. The mass of an object times the square root of the speed of light. Not the square root. the speed of light squared. I don't exactly understand all that physics myself, but that's the formula. I'm going to give you a few other formulas to think about, but a formula is not necessarily the best conceptual framework. Something simple that I cannot see or visualize or consider that helps me recognize the variables that you're thinking about and how they're connected to each other. I have a student right now who just proposed his dissertation, who came up with, he's looking at mentor programs for from middle school to high school. And he decided that the independent variable was the amount of support that the mentor program provided. And the dependent variable was the number of failure rates in 9th grade in high school. So I said, what does that look like, Kevin? And he came up with a series of arrows to show how the numbers of supports had a bearing on or affected the dependent variable, which would be the failure rate in high schools. Easy enough. So start thinking that way. This is not going to gel 1, 2, 3. This is something that's going to evolve. The theoretical framework I hope you get. What are the broad ideas? In one of the discussion responses, I said something along these lines. Think of it as a bundle of ideas that come under one umbrella, whether it be critical race feminism, or whether it be organizational frameworks, or whether it be motivation theory. What is the theory that you're going to use as the basis for conversation in chapter 2? How is that going to reverberate back to chapter 1? Can't write chapter 1 without having written chapter 2, or roughed out chapter 2 at least. And how are you going to use that theoretical framework in chapter 5? When a year from now, or thereabouts, next fall maybe, at best, I guess. When a year from now, you're going, no, more than that for you guys, all right? Maybe 2 years from now, someone's going to challenge you about the data that you've pulled together and the conclusions that you've drawn, is going to say, show me how that matched up with your theory and your conceptual framework. Now that your heads are bouncing off the Epcot wall behind me, I will stop. So I hope that you see this video before before the class. If you don't, even though I'm going to be talking about many of these things in more detail in the Tuesday class on the 1st, it doesn't hurt to watch this, because sometimes my pearls of wisdom in the class aren't as good as my pearls of wisdom on a Zoom. Sometimes my pearls of wisdom on a Zoom aren't as good as my pearls of wisdom in the class. Just the way it works out. He smiled. Okay, enough said. I don't want to beat you to death. It's a Sunday, and it's a Sunday. I have to go shovel the snow. I'll see you later.